Hey everyone, Enrique here. Welcome to another review. The X-Men are back, and we finally get to see the second season of X-Men 97. So, I think it's important to mention that this is a continuation from the first season of X-Men 97. A lot of things happened, and I made a lot of videos reviewing each individual episode, and I'm going to do the same thing with this season because not only do I believe that X-Men has a lot of details in story and characters, but also in the background, in the references, in the appearances from other people from both the X-Men lore and the Marvel comics, all the characters that have appeared and all the Easter eggs that are missing. Also, I that's one of the things I always wanted to talk about when it comes to this season. So I'm gonna start doing so as well, and I'm going to release it every Wednesday, so you are all up to date. I'm gonna release the first episode in my review on the first episode here. The other two I'm going to do so next week because I want to give as much detail as possible about each character, each individual, and try my best to, it's a lot of content because I also make reviews every Wednesday and every Friday, Friday, sorry. But as X-Men 97, it deserves to be analyzed and be talked about as much as possible because I really love that show. So, without further ado, let's talk about these episodes. But before I get into that, it should probably be mentioned. Please keep in mind there are spoilers here. So, if you haven't watched the first season of X-Men 97 or you haven't watched the first three episodes of the second season, you might want to stop the video right here and check them out. Since I think I'm going to get into a lot of spoilers when it comes to this season. So bear that in mind, and I hope you enjoy this episode. So let's start by doing something I always wanted to say since the show came out. Previously, on X-Men, there was a mutant a long time ago that went by the name Ensavanur. It was believed to be the first mutant in existence. Born all in the past, in Egyptian times, he believed that the only way to make sure that the entire world is better was to destroy the old one. From the ashes of its world, it will have to be something better. And thus, he decided to become something even more fearful, something that goes by his own magnificence and his own namesake. In this case, Ensavanur rechristened himself as Apocalypse. Now, Apocalypse is not just a threat to the X-Men, he's a threat to the entire world, if not the entire universe, as this was one of the most fearsome and most terrifying villains in all the X-Men media. Arguably, he has battled the X-Men more times throughout the 5 seasons on the original run. Whether it was creating his own Four Horsemen to destroy the world, creating a techno-organic virus to destroy every life on Earth, mutant and human alike, using an alien ship to upgrade himself and his weapons, or even, worst of all, trying to manipulate time and use the psychics of the world to destroy the entire timeline so he could create something better in an axis. This has been the biggest villain that the X-Men had to deal with for multiple seasons. Apocalypse didn't appear in just one episode and then wait for the next ones. He had appeared in multiple ones throughout the entire run. He was consistently causing a lot of trouble for the X-Men, and it took a lot of effort for our teammates to find a way to stop him. In the end, they managed to stop Apocalypse in the four-parter Beyond Good and Evil. This was the ultimate plan for Apocalypse to finally become victorious. It was supposed to be the finale of the show. and it was supposed to conclude with Apocalypse being destroyed. However, because of the success of X-Men in the original run, they decided to commission a fifth season, which was a mistake for people. They believed that they should have never gotten a fifth season, but in the end, it was leaving the door open for Apocalypse to return. And so he did in the episode The Fifth Horseman. You see, he installed an emergency situation, or in case of an emergency situation, in which he used a mutant called Cortez. Cortez was a mutant that appeared in the two-parter Sanctuary, in which he betrayed Magneto in the first time he created Asteroid M in order to become the leader of the mutants and destroy the humans. But it failed. He was left to die in the asteroid the first time, but then Apocalypse rescued him from there and used him for his own means. In this case, he used Cortez in order to find a vessel after the events of Beyond Good and Evil. He got trapped in a void, unable to escape from it. Basically, he was left to die or be destroyed without any physical body. But he wanted to find a new vessel in order to return to Earth and continue his plans afterwards. In the end, he found his vessel in Cortez. Believing that Cortez failed, he decided to change his souls, trapped in Cortez's soul into the void, and then using his body in order to recreate his original self. And that's where we left off. Now, if you want to know how the entire season ended, it was with the X-Men being trapped in different timelines. And as we all learned to find out, one of those timelines, or at the very least two of them, are related to Apocalypse. One in the past, where he was beginning, and one in the future when his rule is supreme. Now that we got the pleasantries out of the way, what is the episode about and what it could lead to for the next 3 episodes or the next 2 episodes, and overall the entire show. This season, or at the very least, the first episode is called Days of Past Future, a reference to the two-parter of the original series called Days of Future Past, when we see Bishop travel back in time to help the X-Men stop an impending doom. But here it's seeing our X-Men in different points in time. In this case, the episode focuses on the team of X-Men who were trapped in the distant future. As we see Forge travel back, or at the very least travel forward into the future, where he sees the dystopian Earth ruled by Apocalypse. We see a group of resistance called the Ascani clan, who are reading in a prophecy that the young boy called Nathan Summers will one day liberate them from the rule of Apocalypse and save the Earth, as well as become someone very important, in this case, Cable. As we see throughout the episode, we see Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and Jean Grey raising a young Nathan Summers and trying to teach him about his powers, abilities, and what his destiny might be for him in the future, but also doubting coming back or even not leaving Nathan behind, since everything that I've been through is teach them to be better parents. Needless to say, when Forge arrives, it makes things complicated, and now it's up to this team as well as our favorite parents to find out a way to help Nathan and to become the man that he is today in this distant future. So now that I talk about the plot of this episode, now I think it's time to talk about the focus and the characters that are inhabiting this first episode of the second season. And I think it's only fair that I talk about my favorite characters of all time in X-Men comics and in media: Cyclops, aka Scott Summers, and Jean Grey, aka the Phoenix. both voiced by Ray Chase and Jennifer Hale. I said it before and I said it a million times. Cyclops and Jean Grey are among my favorite characters of all time, that alongside their son Cable. In my opinion, Cyclops and Jean Grey have been done dirty for a long time by the movies and in other cartoons, particularly Wolverine and the X-Men. It shows them in the best highlight possible. Now, obviously, a lot of people, including a critic called the Nostalgia Critic, or Doug Walker if you want to call it, said that X-Men 97 made those characters more interesting. Or at the very least, they finally got them right. That is wrong. They were always right. It's just that the thing is, people were not willing to see the beauty of their characters, especially in Cyclops, since everybody, including him, saw as nothing more than a boring character and a superfluous one nonetheless. But I said it before and I said it again, he was never that. Hell, in the first run of the X-Men in the 90s, he took down a lot of Sentinels, Mr. Sinister, and was able to tame the Phoenix Force, or at the very least, to make sure that Jean didn't went out of control with the Phoenix. And he is the father of one of the most important mutants in history. So you tell me that he's not a complex or interesting character? Get out of here. And this one is no exception, as we see both Cyclops and Jean realize of what they're doing after raising Nathan for the short amount of time they have and trying to teach him about right and wrong, what's right, when it's the right moment to lead, what's important about his powers and how to control them. After all, Nathan was infected with a techno-organic virus that was killing him. Thankfully, with the help of Cyclops and Jean, he managed to control it. And while they're reluctant to leave him behind, they still have hope that they might end up seeing him again and raise him and to be the parents that they couldn't be before. And that's the thing. I still believe, and I know that I said it before in my last video, that while Madame Pryor was the real mother of Cable, it is Jean Grey who's still the mother as well. Because Madame Pryor was the clone of Jean. So it's an extension of her in some ways. So Jean is still the same as she was. Even the clone of her was Jean Grey. She wasn't trying anything else. Hell, even the name Madame Pryor was only taken because she couldn't be the same person as her. After discovering that she was a clone, of course. So that's the thing. But it's good to see that this episode, seeing both Jean and Scott finding a way to raise Nathan into this distant future, how to be a great leader, is one of my favorite things of this episode. Any scene with Cyclops and Jean helping Nathan and being badass as a family, as a whole unit, to me is very beautiful. And it shows and foreshadows the destiny that Nathan is supposed to do, not just by stopping Apocalypse, but also stopping any other threat. And that's what I love about this episode. Interesting fact about Nathan Summers, the man who is voicing him is actually a recent actor who had a hit movie called Obsession. His name is Michael Johnston. He got a huge amount of success with that movie, and now he's voicing the young version of Cable. So yeah, he's eating well this year alongside her co-star Indy Navarrete. I'm gonna talk to her later when it comes to Halloween time, but rest assured she's also a very huge highlight of that movie. I should mention that Scott and Jean raising young Nathan into the future is based on the stories on the comic book called The Adventures of Cyclops and Jean Grey with the similar premises. So it's good to see that they're not only paying a tribute to that comic, but also showing them in full highlight with their powers, still being able to rescue and nurture Nathan into being a new born leader, and that is foreshadowing his destiny. With that said, let's talk about the three characters that I thought they were in different times. In this case, Logan, aka Wolverine, Morph, and Aurora Monroe, aka Storm, voiced by Cal Dodd, JP Calicak, and Alison Seeley Smith. So I said in my last video that we didn't know where they ended up with, how Storm, Morph, and Wolverine ended up in the time, if they ever were pulled into another timeline. I had the theory that maybe they were in present day helping out to form a new team of X-Men in Australia. I also thought that they might ended up in a time where Wolverine was actually in his time discovering his past and what he became. But no, that wasn't the case. Those three actually ended up in the same future as Scott and Jean. So this is something that it's important for them. So it's good to see Storm having a lot of highlight with her powers. In fact, you can argue that her powers have improved thanks to Mother Ascani, which I'm gonna get to in a moment. But it's good to see that she is showing more of how she controls other things more than just nature. And that is the one thing that I love about this episode. They also are exploring with the powers of Storm as well. We also get a glimpse of what happened to Morph and Wolverine, particularly with Wolverine, since after the events of the first season, his adamantium bones were thrown out of his body. They were ripped apart from his body, and now he is back to pretty much being what it was. The same Wolverine, but now in a more savage way. It seems that the bone claws were actually made of bone and not adamantium, as the show did imply that maybe they were implanted by the Weapon X program. But in reality, we see Wolverine with a new set of bone claws, and those ones were not as strong as the original ones made of adamantium, given the fact that, well, adamantium is the strongest metal in the world, and now the bone claws that Wolverine uses keep being broken and being regenerated every time. It should mention that the Savage Wolverine was also in the comics, I think during the time of the Jim Lee era. It was a time where he became more animalistic, more hairy, and almost mind numb. Like he was more dumb, but also very animal-like. It's also good to see that both him and Morph are still with each other. They're still supporting each other, still Morph bringing the sense of levity and being a good uncle to young Nathan Summers. He actually brought a baseball ball to Nathan, which to me just says Morph loves baseball. That in my book is great. And it's also good to see how he also keeps exploring his powers by morphing into Thor. I don't know how the hell did he manage to create a hammer with his mutation, but I'll take it. It doesn't matter. I'll take it. It's good to see all of these three still in different points that they were before. It's also good to see Forge, voiced by Gil Birmingham, be able to travel back in time for the first time. Forge is now a time traveler other than Bishop, and now he's doing everything he can to bring the woman he loves, Storm, and his friends back to the 90s. So it's good to see Forge in action again. Now let's talk about Mother Ascani, who is voiced by none other than Gates McFadden. You probably know her best for her role as Beverly Crusher in Star Trek The Next Generation. And in here, it's good to see that another actress from TNG is making an appearance in an X-Men story or media. We all know that Patrick Stewart, known for being Picard, also appeared as Professor Charles Xavier in the movies. So it's good to see that there is another actor who made a leap into the X-Men world be part of this one. Now, I should probably bring you some context to who Mother Ascani is. Now, the show implies it very heavily, but Mother Ascani is the leader of the clan in which she wields the power of the Phoenix Force. Arguably has more control of the Phoenix more so than Jean Grey. And if you're wondering how's that even possible, well, the name of Mother Ascani, her real name, is Rachel Summers, the daughter of Scott and Jean from a different future. Here, she doesn't say who she is or her actual name, but it really shows that she has a connection with Scott, with Jean, and with Nathan. In many respects, Rachel is almost like the young daughter of Cyclops and Jean, and pretty much the young sister of Cable. But in here, it's almost like a reverse role because she is now older, and Nathan is already young enough. But here, it's almost like she's trying to be the grown-up sister, helping her little brother with these turbulent times. Now, obviously, this is probably gonna end up changing in the future, but rest assured that maybe Rachel will come back into an alternate timeline, maybe looking more young. And I hope they do so because Rachel Summers in the comics, she evolved and she became more than what she was. So it's good to see like a precursor of what is to come. And I hope to see Rachel Summers really soon. Gates McFadden does a great job of making Rachel Summers, Mother Ascani, into a very wise old woman who has lived this life and was wise enough to help young Cable and all the others into these turbulent times. I should probably mention, Mother Ascani was responsible for taking the X-Men in different points in time. Using her powers, she transported both Jean, Scott, Storm, Wolverine, and Morph into their future, while Magneto, Charles, and Nightcrawler, Beast, and Rogue all ended up in the past in order to change history. So yeah, everything that happened in the last season was all due to Mother Ascani, and her goal is to change both the future and the past at the same time. So that brings us to the Horsemen of the Apocalypse from the future that Apocalypse created. In this case, it's also referring to the comics. So let's talk about who are the Horsemen of the Apocalypse in this distant future. First, we have the subordinate who is following Apocalypse, in this case Ozymandias, who is voiced by Tony Amendola, and he is the one who's leading this new group of horsemen, causing more chaos and destruction to our heroes. So let's take a look at each of individual. First, we have the Horseman of Death, Sanjar Javed, a man who can project element auroras, infecting others with a spectrum of terminal diseases, including plagues like the Black Death. He's pretty much a guy who looks like a wrong version of Aladdin and Jafar melted into one, flying in his carpet. It's ridiculous and it looks very insidious. The other one who is important in the comics is Ichisumi, who is the horseman of pestilence. In this case, she can create or at the very least unleash a swarm of nearly omnivorous yummy beetles stored within her body, and she releases them by dislocating her own jaw, which is insidious. In the comics, she actually has an important role in which she ends up with Archangel. It has children, in this case the Apocalypse twins. So yeah, she doesn't have much of a character here, but it's still insidious enough to pose a threat. The next one is War, who in this case is now being held by Decimus Furius, a Roman mutant who got his powers in ancient Roman and wields a scythe, making his strike deadly. He is also pretty much an impersonation of a minotaur, and he looks very sick. And the one that I found hilarious and threatening at the same time was Jeb Lee, the Horseman of Famine, able to create a auditory cancer through the use of his tambourine, in which he can make his tambourine and sounds look very deadly. So yeah, he looks ridiculous, but he looks funny and deadly at the same time. I cannot help the instance in which I laugh and also feel terrified for this guy. And of course, now we know what the end goal of Apocalypse is. He wants to strike the X-Men in the 90s when he believes are the most vulnerable. Now, we don't know how much is causing all this, but we also know one thing for sure. Now that Apocalypse knows what his goal is, he decides to go back in time and stop the X-Men before they were even created. Or at the very least, stop the X-Men in their most vulnerable, in the 90s. Now let's talk about the animation. I could honestly say that is as stellar as always, but they're almost upping the ante with this one, making not only showing the powers how far they can go with Storm as well, but also how Nathan and his powers are also evolving, and how his destiny is becoming much bigger. The animation of the action sequences for everyone showing off their powers is amazing to watch and a delightful taste to the eyes. Definitely improving upon the first season if it wasn't already improved already. But yeah, definitely showing a lot of good sense and a lot of optimism for the future in this dystopian. Well, it doesn't matter. I enjoyed this episode, one of my favorite openings, and we have to wait and see what happens in the next two episodes. So you're gonna have to wait for those during every Wednesday. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Overall, it was a good opening. It's good to see how young Nathan became Cable, how his destiny was foreshadowed, and how he saw himself as a leader. And it's good to see Cyclops and Jean's development as characters, as well as being parents, and how it's hard to let go, and especially when you see a version of your son being helpless. It's also good to see the story of Apocalypse beginning at this moment, and we have to wait and see the consequences of each action. So, what do you think of this new episode? Do you love it, hate it? Let me know in the comment section below. And stay tuned for next Wednesday as I review the next episode of X-Men 97 Season 2. Until then, I've been Enrique, and I'll see you next time. Peace.